And happy Friday to you, everybody that is tuning in today on this live edition of the Cabin Fever podcast. Happy Friday, especially to all of you who have gone back to work this week. And your state has come off quarantine. Some of you have gone back to work. And it actually means that Friday means something. Again, we can tell what day it is. It is a great place to be, that you're able to go back and start putting your life back together. I know that 21 states, I believe, came off curfew this week, or not curfew, but quarantine this week. And so if that's you and you're one of them, great. Let's continue to pray for the rest of the states that are still under quarantine. I know that even in California and some of the bigger states are starting to even turn on some of the jobs so that people can start to go back to work. We've still got a long road ahead of us here, but man, we are making progress. And so it is the Cabin Fever podcast. I'm Brent Bailey, your host, and it's great to have you with us. We're so glad that you joined us on whatever platform that you're watching or listening to us on, whether that's Apple TV or Roku or Amazon Fire or Facebook or YouTube or Twitter, or even all of you folks that are gamers over there on Twitch. Man, we love coming and being with you guys. All of you folks on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio. All of you that have been listening and supporting the show, we're so grateful for you and so thankful that you have given us your time today. Why don't you go ahead and do me a favor? If you are on one of the social networks, please click the share button right now. Help us get the word out about today's show. We've got a great one planned for you. And before we get into our first guest today, I don't know if anybody else saw this, but last night I was kind of reading through the USA Today, and I saw this was Teacher Appreciation Week. I don't know if anybody else realized that. A lot of folks probably want to appreciate themselves because they're doing homeschooling. And I saw that this article was written for the Teacher Appreciation Week. It was the countdown, if you will, a great big, article about the best television show teachers of all time. And so I saw this. I kind of read through it. We're going to get into that for a second. But I do want to say, for all of you who are teachers, man, can I say we already appreciated you, but you actually have moved up on the ladder, which is really where you should have been. But all of us who have been homeschooling our kids this week and for the last several weeks, thank you to all the teachers that do this on a regular basis. Man, we're so appreciative of you. Now, the article listed some of the best television show teachers of all time. They had people like Mr. Cotter. I think we have a graphic for it. There was people on there that, like Mr. Cotter, and there were folks like Walter White, which I thought that was hilarious. Walter White from Breaking Bad. There's the teacher from Glee, Mark Cooper from Hanging with Mr. Cooper, Mrs. Keating from How to Get Away with Murder. This is not a good list. Mr. Clark from Stranger Things, Mrs. Crabapple from The Simpsons, Mrs. Frizzle from The Magic School Bus, some other famous teachers. Now, there were a few. There was the professor from the Gilligan's Island. I was just sitting here thinking about who was my favorite teacher growing up, and that's what we want to hear from you about today in the comment section below. Why don't you tell us who your favorite teacher was as you were growing up? I remember Mrs. White was my first grade teacher. She was also my mom's first grade teacher, so that was kind of unique. But I think probably my favorite teacher growing up was my 10th and 11th grade current events and then history teacher was Mr. Gilbert, and he was really cool. He was just real, and loved having his class. It was always such a great conversation during those times. So that's something I thought I would just start the show off with today. A big thank you to all of the teachers that are out there for taking the time to teach our kids. And man, it really means so much to us, especially those of us who don't have the patience to teach 7th grade math anymore. Okay, so thank you so much, teachers. I know that you've been working extra hard even though you haven't been in the classrooms. So, all right, well, our first guest today is a skateboarding legend. And how can you say that he's a legend? Well, not only is he in the Hall of Fame, but he also is one of the founding forefathers of what we know now as the movement, if you will. He was one of the first guys. Tony Hawk has credited him as being the guy that inspired him. Said he used to drive around looking for empty pools to skate in. There was this before this is what it was, and we got some footage on the screen right now of him being inducted into the Skateboarding Hall of Fame. He is the host of the El Gato Classic in Palm Springs, California. I remember in Kentucky. Now this is world away when Kentucky and California in the 70s. I remember being this little chubby kid going over to my cousin's house, and he was the first person I ever saw. I was probably 7 or 8 years old. He had a skateboard. We didn't even know what that was back in those days. And when he got a skateboard and he started getting into skateboarding magazines, and I remember laying in his driveway looking at the pictures of our first guest and some of the other guys doing things that we just thought was magic. Like, how are they doing that? That's got to be, do they have wires? What are they doing? And I remember being, just so impressed by that whole thing, doing tricks. Now, the great thing about our first guest is his journey doesn't start or doesn't end with skateboarding. God got a hold of his life. He's now a pastor in Palm Springs, California. He is a great guy. He has brought hope to the Coachella Valley through Jesus and the message that he has. And so we're so glad to have with us on the program today Eddie Elguera, the cat, if you will, El Gato. So let me see if I can get your volume turned up here. Are you there?
Hey. Yes, I'm here. It's great to be on with you.
It's so good to have you. Thanks for taking the time out to do it today. How's everything going out there in Palm Springs?
It's going along like everywhere else in the country. I know that we're having a little bit difficult time here of opening like it is in New York, but we're pushing through, doing what we can to get the gospel out and not go crazy.
Yeah. So now you've been doing video services for a little while now.
Well, yeah, this is going to be our 9th week. Can you believe it? 9 weeks.
Wow.
And so we started off, actually, I was at the Increase event in Hawaii.
Yes, you were.
Flew back, met with our team. It was on Friday afternoon, Saturday. Said, we prayed about it. Said, what are we going to do? We said, no, we're not going to have church. Had to put church together online, let people know. And so what we did is we went online that day and it was live, but then for the next 6 weeks, we kind of did recording, but it didn't work out for me. I couldn't handle it. So the last couple of weeks I've been live real time, and which is the best part I love about it is we're watching Facebook and YouTube and people interacting. So at the end of the service, we see people's prayer requests and boom, real time prayers. And so, I can't sit down and preach. I can't record my message because it's like I need the inspiration of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, you gotta need that feedback. I know. I've been doing mine real time because I could not talk to just a camera, not knowing there's nobody on the other side yet. So I feel you. So let's talk a little bit about your story. Now, you started back in the 70s, and when I heard you speak at one of the Increase events, you were just talking about you would drive around looking for pools that were empty.
Yeah.
That's how this started?
Well, actually, I saw a magazine in 1975. The summer of 1975, I walked into this liquor store, Blue Jay, California. It's a small little hick town in the San Bernardino Mountains, small. Back then, probably population maybe 100. And so I went into the liquor store. I saw this magazine with a guy skateboarding in an empty swimming pool. And the magazine was Skateboarding Magazine, dedicated to skateboarding. And I thought to myself, I want to do that one day. And I never realized that walking into that store, that would change the rest of my life. And it's kind of like, I love the scripture when the Bible says about how David served his generation. I believe that skateboarding is part of me serving God's plan for my life and being a part of the skateboard industry. So that got me started. And I didn't have no money, didn't have a car. I was 14 years old. I'd hitchhike down from the mountains to San Bernardino, looking around, finding swimming pools to skate in and doing whatever it took to skate pools and just become a better skateboarder, and hoping that one day maybe I'd be on the cover of the magazine, maybe hoping that one day I could be a professional and get free stuff. Basically, you wanted to get sponsored because when you were sponsored, you get free stuff. And that's pretty much the goal at first. I want to get free stuff.
Yeah. And so when you were doing this, did you I mean, I don't know. Maybe you were thinking this way. Did you think that you were going to start or be at the forefront of a real movement that because it was popular, but man, what it became is such a huge thing. Did you even have those kind of thoughts in your mind when you were doing that?
No, for me, I wanted to be in the magazine. So I thought maybe one day I could be in the magazines. Back then, what skateboarding was mostly in the beach areas. So the coastal areas in Florida, you'd get California and Australia, different places like that. And I thought, well, maybe, I hope I could get in the magazine one day. If I could get a picture, man, I've arrived. Not thinking where skateboarding would be. And you know what? Skateboarding at that time was really a rebellious sport. It's like if you skateboarded, people looked down upon you. It's like, what are you doing? And I would skate throughout the mountain everywhere. And everybody knew me as the skateboarder. I'd go wherever I could find a small patch of asphalt or concrete. I would do tricks and 360s. This was before, a lot of the vertical skating. So yeah, not knowing that what it was going to take me to or what I got to be a part of. I just said, I want to be in the magazine. I want to get free stuff. Basically, that was my my desire, my push.
Okay, so our guest today is Pastor Eddie Elguera, and he is also known as El Gato. He is a skateboarding legend, but he's also a pastor. And in the face of all these, the popularity and the movement, God got a hold of your life and really took it for a big turn. Tell us a little bit about what happened there, because you laid down skateboarding for a while, right?
Yeah, it was. So in 1975, when I saw the magazine cover, I thought, okay, one day I'll be on the cover. One day, hopefully, be in the magazine. 5 years later, 4 years later, 1979, I was on the cover. I was a skateboarder of the year. I started inventing all kinds of maneuvers, the Elguera, frontside rock and roll, frontside invert, fake. So I started leading out kind of the path of skateboarding and invented a lot of the maneuvers that are still done today, but it was all new back then. After 2 years, I was in the Devo video for skateboarding and traveled the world and at the top. 2 years in a row, I just felt, is there anything else? I have to strive for another contest, or I have to win another contest. And I got to that place of just saying, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't know. I just stopped skateboarding. Everybody was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And for 3 years, like everyone that doesn't know the Lord, they search for fulfillment, whether it's fame, whether it's money, whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol. And so skateboarding wasn't fulfilling my life, because in all reality, that was not going to fulfill my life. Yeah, God gave me this gift, but it's part of the byproduct of being a believer of a Christian. God says, I want you to use your gift. I was using it for the wrong reason. So what happened was 3 years trying to find fulfillment, drinking, drugs, smoking, whatever, you name it, that party life. And so one day this lady came into my brother's restaurant. I'd lost everything. I was working fast food. And here I was at the top, and now I'm working fast food. And a divine appointment, this lady from Huntington Beach, California, loved the Lord, just would preach the gospel wherever she was, on the beach of Huntington Beach, wherever. And she was there just by chance in Blue Jay, California. She was just there for the day with her husband, went in, started sharing the Lord with me and talking about the Lord. And then skateboarding came up. I just said, through skateboarding, I had gave my life over to God that day. She says, now God gave you that talent. You're never going to find fulfillment in that. It's through Jesus Christ. Gave my life to the Lord. But what the amazing thing about it is, a lot of times people will lead people to the Lord and just go, okay, now figure it out for yourself. 3 weeks later, she came up and she goes, did you guys find a church? We didn't know we needed to go to church. And she says, well, I've been coming up the last couple of weeks and I found this church that you need to go to. I'm going to come up on Sunday. She took us to church. Pastor Jim Cobray, he became my pastor. He was my only pastor for until we planted our church, but he still is my pastor. And started going to church. She would come up Thursday nights from Huntington Beach, discipling me and my family. And it's just like the care that she had. And if I continue to talk about her more, her name is May, I'll start I'll start crying because she impacted my life so much, because not only did she get me saved, but she discipled me and believed in me. Not because I was a skateboarder, didn't want anything out of me because of being a champion, but for who I was as a person.
And so you turn your life over to God. You start down the trail to ministry. You start down ministry. You start a church, and then you start the El Gato Classic. And I think we have some footage of that's up on the screen right now, where so many of the legends really came to this thing, and it became kind of a big deal. I mean, there's Tony Hawk on the screen right there. So many people came to it. Now, I know you said that you're taking a break right now, but you're working on revamping this thing a little bit. But that had to just mean a whole lot to have God just bring that right back into you and kind of come full circle.
Yeah, well, actually, so I got saved in 1983. So 3 years after I stopped skateboarding, 86, God began to speak to me to get back in the industry. Got back in the industry. At first, I was kind of like, I'm not going to be the best anymore. And God says, this isn't about you. I'm going to use you as an ambassador for me in the sport of skateboarding. There wasn't, like today, you see skate churches, skate ministries, but back then it was all new. I was basically one of the first Christian skateboarders. So I got back in the industry, worked my way back into the industry. As I was in there till about 1983, so 86 to 93. And then God began to speak to me, become a youth pastor. And I skated this whole time up until then. So youth pastor for 14 years, now planted this church where we're at now, here in the desert, C3 Palm Springs, and been here for the last going on 14 years as well. And so through that time, I've kind of been in and out of the industry. When I first started the church, I wasn't in it that much. But 5-6 years ago is when I started the El Gato Classic. And it was more to honor the legends of the past, because they don't get the recognition. Today you got corporate sponsors, the social media, but those that laid the foundation back then never really got the recognition or money. So I wanted to honor the past and champion the future. So that's why, I said, hey, you were a pivotal point into skateboard. People may not know it, but I want people to know that you were a pivotal point in the history of skateboarding. So that's kind of what I did. And they just loved gathering together. It was powerful. And like I said, I'm revamping it. There's a new park that's going to be opening in La Quinta. Well, now it's on hold, but I believe once they open that, we're going to do that. And then it's amazing. It's more than a high school reunion. We're family. I mean, we've been in the sport together, competing and part of this history of skateboarding for over 40 years. And so it's kind of that camaraderie.
Yeah. Pastor Eddie Elguera from C3 Palm Springs. You can catch up with him on social media at, let me get it up there, eddieelguera.com, also c3ps.com, and then at Eddie Elguera on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Pastor, thank you so much for coming and being with me today. This was
you.
I could sit and listen to you tell stories for hours, and we want to have you back maybe one day, and when we have more time, we can let you just tell stories about with all the people that you've had the experiences with. Thank you again so much for coming on today.
Thank you.
And stay strong out there. We'll be praying for you, and we're believing for California to open back up pretty soon.
All right.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right. That's Pastor Eddie Elguera of I don't know why this locked up there. There we go. Of Palm Springs and California. You can reach out to him via the Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Now, I see if I can. I think I just lost my second guest. Let me see if I can go back to him. Yeah, this is one of the great things about using new technology that you're not familiar with. So we've tried to start using Zoom, and it's a new platform for me. So I'm trying to figure that out. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not very good at Zoom, so I probably should have gotten more prepared for this beforehand. But our next guest is going to be a news anchor from South Carolina, somebody I've known for his whole life. I remember being a youth pastor in California. Not California, in Oklahoma. And Yeah, you're going to have to just forgive me, folks. I'm just trying to get this going here. When I was a youth pastor in Oklahoma, we used to do a youth conference every year, and his family would bring him out. Also at the Increase events, I would see this young man. He was so young. He was so quiet, and he was just somebody that didn't really say a whole lot, but he was a great young man. And so when he went to when he went to go and be what he became, it really kind of was startling to us. We couldn't believe that this fellow was doing what he's doing. I am so sorry. Let's see if we can get him back in here. All right. I think we've got it going on now. Anyway, he became what he became, and now he is a anchor for WYFF in Greenville, South Carolina. Sorry about that, Joe. We had a little technical mishap there, and so now I'm going to try and get him up on the screen here. Hold on one second. Let's see. That's one of the great things about doing things live on a platform that you're not really familiar with. Here he is, Joe Ripley from WYFF Channel 4, NBC affiliate in Greenville, South Carolina, right?
That's right, Brent. Thanks for having me on. First off,
sorry about that, man. I this is the only second time I've ever used Zoom, so it's a real mess.
So. No worries. I got to say, first, thanks for having me on. You've been tremendous to me and my family over the years. I appreciate that. I appreciate what you're doing with the podcast here, Cabin Fever Podcast, aptly named. And how about El Gato, right?
Yeah, he's awesome, isn't he? Yeah, he's just such I could sit and listen to him tell stories for hours because I grew up reading those magazines that he was in. And so it's kind of like meeting one of your idols. But anyway, listen, I was telling everybody, I remember you growing up. So when you were kind of quiet, didn't say a whole lot. And then when I found out that you went on to become a TV personality, I'm not, it's not because you're, your looks or anything, because you're obviously drop dead handsome man right there. But
Thank you.
But you were just always so quiet. And now you're one of the faces of the NBC News affiliate there in South Carolina. And man, I just have to know, at what point did you start getting the itch to be on TV?
Yeah, well, Brent, I've always been interested in people and sharing their stories. And I've always been that creative type to kind of bring that together. So I got the itch first, probably back in college. I would, grow up looking at sports and get interested in the broadcasters rather than get tied up in the teams. I'd love to know the players' stories. How did they get to where they were? And the coaches themselves, how do they manage teams? And then it just grew into from an interest to discovering this gift I had for sharing stories, to talking to people, connecting with people, and bringing out the emotional, bringing out the most emotional part of their lives and sharing that with people. Because at the end of the day, Brett, it's not about what makes us different, but what all do we have in common? And I've found that throughout the 5 years I've been working in broadcast news.
So our guest is Joe Ripley, anchor person for WYFF4 in Greenville, South Carolina. Now, it's not like this is a non-competitive industry. This is one of the hardest things to break into. What's the key to fulfilling a dream like that in an industry that is so overly competitive?
There's this myth, and maybe there's more truth than fiction to it, that this industry is cutthroat. And in some respects it is. Breaking into this business is hard. You used to have, programs all over the country, designed to filter journalists into the field. But I was blessed and fortunate enough to go to the University of Georgia. Had to get that shout out in there. Go Dogs. The Grady School of Journalism. Hey. They helped mold me into who I am today. And they have a great track record for landing journalists and jobs all around the world. You look at Ryan Seacrest, Deborah Norville, some of the folks I look up to that have made great strides in broadcast, entertainment side, and the news side. But breaking in was a little harder than I thought. So I thought, that UGA would tell me what to do and put me right where I needed to be. Not so much. I got a call during finals week, my senior year in college, after I applied to hundreds of jobs in radio and TV and elsewhere. And it was, my news director, my former boss in Columbus, Georgia. That was my first professional stop here on the road. And so he said, hey, we've heard great things about you. UGA turns out great journalists. We'd love to have you on board. I said, great. What do you want me to do? He said, well, we want you to man the web desk. And I was like, what does that mean? And he says, we want you to handle our social media. We want you to put together our new website and transition us from this kind of antiquated dinosaur of a news station to bringing us into the digital world. This was about 2015, so 5 years ago. And I said, you know what? I want to be on air, but I know I got to do what I got to do to get where I want to be, right?
Yeah.
So I said, let me get my foot in the door. And that's exactly what happened, Brett. 3 months later, they asked me to anchor on the desk, first time, no experience. I said, sure. I was deathly afraid. I remember staring at the screen. I was wondering, is anybody listening right now, or is everybody listening right now? And so I didn't know what was coming out of my mouth. My mind was numb, but boy, was it exhilarating.
It's so and so when you're starting like that, and you dropped some truth there for everybody, because a lot of people would expect to start where you ended up.
Exactly.
That a lot of folks don't like to walk through the process, but the fact that you went and remained faithful, doing something that probably compared to where you are now seemed like such an easy thing to do. But the key is faithfulness, isn't it?
It really is, Brent. And it is that process that you think of. A lot of us want the results now. A lot of us want, to be successful now. Be successful where you are. Success doesn't always mean the title. Success doesn't always mean, the bank account. Success doesn't always mean prominence. Success is doing best what you are doing now, where you are now. And if you are faithful, then if you're faithful in a little, you'll be faithful with more. God will give you more to handle if he knows you can handle the little stuff. And I find myself, recounting a lot of those times where I had to do seemingly menial tasks then that still serve me today. And so don't ever forget, where you are now. Never despise the day of small beginnings, because those steps will lead you eventually to where you will go.
Our guest is Joe Ripley. He's a pastor's kid. He's now a news anchor, and just somebody we're super proud of and super excited to have on the program. Listen, there's a lot of talk, and we don't want to go too deep into this here, but there's a lot of talk right now about the media being untrustworthy and conspiracy theorists everywhere and stuff like that. Do you confront that yourself personally on a daily basis?
On a daily basis, no. Absolutely, I understand the business I'm in. The industry I'm in gets a lot of criticism. It's a lot of flack. But it also gets a lot of praise, Brent, because we are truth seekers. We hear so many voices, and it's hard to distinguish what's right and what isn't. And so the media, if you want to label us that, it's comprised of different components, right? So me being in local news, this is probably the closest you will get to relevant journalism that knocks on your front door and tells you what's happening outside in your communities, in your neighborhoods. And we are tracking down those stories. The stories you hear on the federal level, the political levels, we're breaking those down into what affects you. And so I've gotten it before. I've gotten the, yelling in your face, beating on your window in the car, wondering, what do they have in their hands? What are they going to do?
Yeah.
That fearfulness. But at the same time, I know who's with me, right? I got
Come on
angels
now.
guarding me.
That's right.
I got Jesus living in my heart. I know that, he will never leave me nor forsake me. So everywhere I go out with the expectation that I've got a job to do, and God is going to guard me in doing that job.
So good. One of the things I did see you, one of the posts that I think you put up that you were on with Al Roker one day. That's got to be pretty exciting to have a shot from the national desk.
Absolutely. I've been incredibly blessed to interview President Trump. I've been incredibly blessed to hold forums for political candidates and to get kind of right up in their faces there. And it's an incredibly cool experience, Brent. Got to be on the Today Show.
Yeah.
And of course, we had Al Roker on our program, and they are just sincere folks. I mean, you kind of get an idea for what they might seem like on air, but actually talking to them, they're real folks just like you and I. Talked to Kevin Frazier the other day from Entertainment Tonight, and he was just incredibly real. You know, he was trying to find a way to navigate this whole coronavirus pandemic and dealing with his kids and working from home. And it's just a reminder that, you know, at the same basic level, we're all human, right? But absolutely, Brad, that's one of the perks of the job. You get to talk to important folks here.
That's so cool. This is Joe Ripley, WYFF4, NBC News affiliate out of South Carolina, with us today. Man, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Sorry for the little mess up with Zoom there, but it was so great to have you. We're super proud of you, super excited for the future. I know the answer to this, but I got to ask it anyway. What's the big, the end game stop for you? Are you wanting to be on the national desk?
Oh boy, yeah, Brent. You know, it's funny where life takes you, and it's funny how you plan things and then God changes your plans. But, you know, where I see myself, with my many interests being used. You know, El Gato, Pastor Eddie, was talking about God using his gifts in fulfilling that potential. And I see myself on that national stage, on that global stage, talking to folks, connecting to folks on whatever level they are on right now. So whether that is through news or through music, which I still continue to pursue as well, still playing around, creating some good stuff there. So keep tuned, stay tuned. But I see myself very much using all of those gifts and talents that God gave me, giving back to the community who desperately needs them right now. Brent, if you've got a little time, I just wanted to leave you with a couple points here.
Come on.
I know with the coronavirus running rampant, a lot of people are looking to folks like you for some positivity, and very much thankful for that. But I wanted to break down PPE. That's a term that we've heard a lot these days, personal protective equipment, but kind of broke that down. And I want to give you these points. The first P is protection. Right now, guys, I know, as I mentioned before, you're hearing a lot of voices right now, but you want to protect what's coming in, what you're digesting right now, physically, emotionally, spiritually, all of that, because it does have an impact on you. Brent, we are seeing cases of depression spike. We're seeing suicide cases spike. And we've got to know that no weapon formed against us will prosper.
So good.
You know, we've got to make sure that we are eating, digesting the right things so that we are sustained during this period of crisis. Focus on the positive. You know, at work, we've put a focus. WYFF for Good is our initiative to put a spotlight on more positive stories in our community rather than just talking about the negative. So, we held a food drive the other week where we raised more than 1 million meals for local food banks and folks in need, which was just incredible. All of us played a part in that, and incredibly thankful that I work for a company and a station who has their mind and eye focused on community needs. The other P, we talked about protection, talk about perspective, Brett, and that perspective is going to give you the direction to handle what's going on right now. Do we think of crisis? Do we think of the problem? Or do we think of the challenge? Do we think of the benefits? Do we think of the silver linings in a pandemic? We got to have that expectation that something good will come out of this. You know, I've seen more than ever now, people not worried, but people grateful for the time they get to spend with family, that the time that they were spending at work is now at home, where they do get to, think about what is most important to them. And you got to keep that perspective too, because while others are, going through the pandemic, other people are dealing with things entirely different. I mean, we had some major storms blow through. You know all about storms and how they do in the Midwest and in Florida there with the hurricanes, but we just had a nasty run there of 3 straight weeks of severe weather. Folks lost their houses. Some folks lost their lives, Brett, and it's incredibly painful.
Yeah.
To think about that. But in that same manner, we've seen folks step up. I did a story last week about a team of veterans, Marine veterans, who stepped up, went to the middle of nowhere to help people they didn't even know rebuild after their communities were destroyed. Interviewed this week a girl, Steffi Kong, who is an incredible student athlete at a local college here. She's trying to make it home to Singapore to see her parents because she's about to graduate this year. There are so many stories of people pressing through and people stepping up to do good right now, despite what's going on. P, perspective. So we got P, protection, P, perspective, and the last one, E, is empathy. I think a lot of us feel for what's going on right now, feeling for others going through this crisis, thinking about people losing their jobs, people losing family members, people losing businesses, other struggles. But you know what? You're not alone.
So good.
Jesus was tempted. He was tried like all of us. He knows what we're going through. And we were charged by Apostle Paul to rejoice when others rejoice and mourn when others mourn. I think if a lot of us show that empathy, then we'll be a lot better off. I did a story, Brett, the other week about this couple who was, intent on celebrating their wedding the day before Easter because of the significance of that weekend to them and their faith. And they were limited by the restrictions. But you know what? Some folks in North Carolina stepped up for them. They said, let's see what we have in our storehouse. Let's see what resources we have, what people we know to make this the most special day ever that you guys were intent on having. And that was just incredible to see people stepping up again.
It
Brett,
is.
Because they felt for them.
Yeah.
They felt that need to give what was inside of them to help them to get through this process, this time. And so instead of crisis, in time of crisis, think of PPE, right? Protection, perspective, and empathy. I think we'll be a lot better off because of it.
Man, that's so good. That empathy is, what the Bible says is Jesus was touched by the feelings of our infirmities. And I guess if he's our example, that's what we should be doing. Our guest has been Joe Ripley of WYFF4 in Greenville, South Carolina. Joe, so grateful to have you and so thankful for you and your family. And we look forward to seeing you again. It was great to see you in Hawaii, and hopefully we'll get to see you real soon, and not just via Zoom, but in person.
Absolutely. Hawaii sounds real nice right
Doesn't
now,
it?
Brett. It's overcast here, a little chilly.
Yeah,
so
it is here too.
nice warm beaches. I have to turn on those sound effects.
So
put me there to take me there. But again, thank you, Brent, for having me on. I appreciate it. A quick shout out to all the mothers too. Mother's Day weekend is coming up. Here is your reminder.
Yeah.
So don't forget.
Head out to the open Walmarts right now and get your mom something. So anyway, take care. Give our love to your family, and we appreciate you. Super proud of you. Good job, and we look forward to hearing more great things from you.
Absolutely. God bless you, Brian.
Bless you,
Take
Joe.
care.
All right, take care. That's Joey Ripley, who's now. That's what I call him, but he's known by Joe now on WYFF4 of Greenville, South Carolina. So great job. We're going to wrap up today's show. I know that we had some technical problems today, but it is what it is. It's a new format we're trying to use. As you can tell, Zoom has a few more features than what we've been using before, and it's when you have no crew, you're going to make mistakes. But that brings us to what we want to talk about as we wrap up the show today. I want to say thank you to all of you who have jumped in to start supporting us. I just have been totally humbled by this entire process. When we called Bob Harrison on the first day to ask him to be on, and he was so, yes, let's do it. It was really humbling. And for all of you who have called and texted and supported and started following us on all the social media platforms and things like that, and have been so great to share the podcasts, it's been great. And so we're so and just so grateful for you. I do want to remind you that if you didn't catch my wife's podcast yesterday, she did a special edition of the Cabin Fever podcast with her mother, her sister, and their good friend. So it was Sharon, Jenny, and Christine Martin and Jody, and they really celebrated moms. Now, this is always, it is archived on our YouTube channel, and you can watch it again. I would encourage you to watch it, especially if you're a mom or if you want to play it for your mom. It is a great, great piece of ministry for moms and women's. And so I wanted to thank Jody for doing that yesterday. And that brings me to a big announcement. Jody is going to become a regular here on the podcast. She's going to start her own version of this on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Now you say, when is that going to happen? We're still trying to make the adjustments for that. But Jody is going to be starting her own version of the Cabin Fever podcast, or whatever we end up changing the name to. She's going to start taking it Tuesdays and Thursdays, so you won't want to miss that. She's going to have powerful ladies and powerful guests on her own as she will be bringing you her version on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Now, that means that the podcast is going to be going to 5 days a week. We're going to become a daily show, and it's going to be live. We'll keep you posted as to when her first non-special is going to air. But we're so excited to be able to do this and to bring this with you. We thank all of those of you who have reached out and have been started to support the podcast financially. You know I sound like PBS when I do that, but this podcast is made possible from viewers like you. And if you'd like to get involved and to do this to help us with the podcast so that we could hire some production staff so that yours truly doesn't have to sit here and push all the buttons, but we could hire somebody to get it done, that is where we want to go next. We want to be able to upgrade to hire somebody to be able to do the production side of this. You can text a gift to 84321, search for Direction Church, where you're going to say, what is that? What is Direction Church? Direction Church is the church that I pastor, and we are totally tax exempt. So when you give your gift, it is a tax exempt gift for that, and we'll give you the donation letter at the end of the year. So it is a benefit to you as well as the information that we bring on the podcast. Okay. So we want to thank you for that in advance as we go to advance this to become, a real show. I'm not getting choked up, I promise. Okay. Now, this Monday, we're going to be taking the day off because we have a travel day. Jody and I have been up in Kentucky at my parents' house during the quarantine. We came up here for spring break. Everything kind of went south. So we've been up here for now 7 weeks. And so we're going back this weekend to start church services back up for Direction Church. So Monday is going to be a travel day because we got to come back up here to get our kids and start packing up our stuff here. So Monday, we won't be on this Monday. However, Wednesday, our next scheduled podcast, I got a very special guests that day. I've got Darryl Strawberry from the Mets Hall of Fame organization, New York Mets, Major League Baseball superstar, and his wife, Tracy. They are just outstanding ministers. Of course, if you're familiar with Darryl, you'll know that he is a absolute legend in the baseball world, and so we're going to look forward to having them with us. Then, looking ahead into the following week, I've also got former NWA heavyweight champion Nikita Koloff, and we're working on scheduling Grammy winner Jason Crabb. So we've got great guests in the pipeline for you. So go ahead and keep sharing the podcast, and it's going to be another great day. Head outside if you can and break the cabin fever. Have a great day, everybody.